Abraham, welcome.
Hey, what's going on?
Thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been doing real estate since I was 22, and I've been doing a lot of businesses since I was 15. So I'm 50 this year, so about 35 years in business and close to 30 years and 28 years in real estate. So I own a couple hundred plus rentals, and I do a couple hundred fix and flips every year. So I've done thousands of properties over the lifetime. And I do a lot of lending. So I do a lot of lending for people that do fix and flips in the Atlanta market or other places in Georgia. And I do other types of loans like double closes and different things like that all over the country. So those are the three primary things that keep me busy: the lending, the real estate, and business stuff.
Yeah. So at 15, you got started. Like, what made you start getting into business at 50, at that such a young age?
Yeah, so I got into it because my first business was in sports cards, and I collected them my whole life. And I used to go to the shows every single weekend, and I just started selling some and trading and doing different things. And I saw how profitable it could be, so I turned it into a business. And I went from being a collector to more of one of the people that were dealing in it and buying and selling it, and ended up getting boosts and started making money. And from there, I just got really good at it and kept growing it. So when I was younger, I never really lived with my parents or anyone. I kind of like lived more with foster families and like boarding schools and stuff like that. So I never really had my own thing. I always had to listen to everybody else. And once I started making a little bit of money, I was able to be able to do more of what I wanted to do, because when you have money, you could do stuff. You don't have money, you can't do anything. You have to rely on other people. So I saw, as I was making more money, I was able to do more stuff, and I liked the freedom of it, and I just kind of got addicted to it and just put everything I had into to growing it and being able to make more money so I could do whatever I want.
Yeah, at 15, I mean, you're going to booths and doing all these things. How did you get to where you're going? How did you move all your inventory and all that?
Yeah, so back then, this was back in like 1989, 1990. I did a lot of baseball card shows. So every weekend there's shows all over. We had multiple shows in Atlanta where I lived at the time. And then when they didn't have shows in Atlanta certain weeks, or they really did have one every weekend somewhere in Atlanta, but for the bigger shows, they had like every few months, there was like a big national type show, and I would just travel to those. I would buy a booth, set up, and sell what I had, and people would bring me stuff. But back then, there was the internet. Prodigy was like the big thing.
Hmm.
It was even before AOL, and there were some trading boards on Prodigy where people would buy and sell different things, and baseball cards was one of them. So I bought a lot of stuff during the week on Prodigy, and I would sell different things on Prodigy, and then on the weekends, I'd sell the local stuff that people wanted here that people didn't want in other places, and then of course. The way you really make money in sports cards, or really any business for the most part, is when you buy stuff. So the shows that I went to was mainly to buy deals and figure out the best ways to get rid of the stuff. So the local stuff I would sell in Atlanta. The certain things were hotter in other areas, but that's kind of how the business went. And then every single year I just got better and grew it, and I did that for many years until I got into my next thing.
So, I mean, at such a young age, did you have to overcome any mindset issues to get into this?
I mean, I wouldn't say I had to come up with mindset issues as far as business, because I just it was something that I was really passionate about. I really loved sports at the
Mhm.
time, and I really loved what I was doing. And every single month or every single week that I did another event, I made more money. So I knew I could do it. I never really had issues where I didn't think it could be done. But the mindset issues were really about other stuff, not really about the business. It was just
Mhm.
my age and different things like that. But I talked to a lot of other people, and they're like telling me how good I was doing for my age, and how they were doing and how I was doing compared to them. And eventually I surpassed everyone. So I knew that I was doing everything right.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned is that you're kind of going through different foster families.
Uh-huh.
That's, I mean, something that my wife and I have been talking about is bringing our own home. But it seems kind of tough because you bring a kid in, and for whatever reason, it's not their fault. They don't have a stable life. You bring them in for a little temporarily, and then you send them somewhere else. Like, how was that as a child going through that?
Well, actually, every single time that I started going to like a foster family, the intent was to really stay there until after high school. But for
Mm,
one reason or another, they didn't work out at one place. So I went to another, and then the intent was to stay there, and then it didn't work out for another. Most of the time, it didn't work out was probably my fault. Like it was actually definitely my fault. I mean, I was a bad kid.
mm,
So when I say bad kid, I used to get in trouble all the time in school for just being class clown, causing trouble in class, fighting, all these different things. So a lot of it was me, and my mindset as a person when I was 12, 13, 14, 15 was I was a troublemaker. I just didn't see why it why I should behave and how it benefit my life. So um but I grew out of it over the years. So most of the people I lived with were good. They're all pretty much good people. I just it was more me than them, and I just kept getting in trouble, and it just didn't make sense for them to keep having me. And a lot of times, you know, because they weren't my real parents, I
mm.
also didn't treat them right, like I should have.
Got it. So when you're transitioning from house to house, when you were leaving, how did that affect you?
In what way?
Just emotionally, because you were brought in to hopefully have a stable life, a stable family, and then you're no longer
Yeah, I mean,
living there.
emotionally, it wasn't great, but again, a lot of it was just my fault, and it was just my mindset. Like, who are these people? Why am I staying with them? I'm not comfortable with them because you have to get comfortable with them. Once you're comfortable with someone, then it's good. I never got like comfortable enough, or I didn't really. The biggest problem was I didn't respect anyone. Like
Mm,
I didn't look at them like my parents. I didn't look at them like someone I need to listen to, and because I didn't respect them, it was very hard to make it work.
right. Uh, yeah. Thank you for talking about that. Uh, so at 15, you're going through and you're doing these shows and making all this money. Like, what do you do with the money? Are you just reinvesting it? Are you blowing it
Yeah.
on other things or?
So that's the one thing about me. I never blew money. Every single penny I ever make, I always reinvest it and try to grow it. That's what I've always done. So, I've had a lot of bad habits, but that's probably the one strongest good habit I have that I
Mhm.
never blew. I never like went out and partied. I never went and bought stuff and did crazy things. I always reinvested it. So I love, I just love seeing it grow. So
Mhm.
every single time I made a lot of money, I would just be able to do more the next week or the next month because I had more to invest and more product and more stuff to sell.
How did you learn how to track your money?
I didn't really track it. I basically um, would every time I would sell stuff, I would just buy more stuff, and I would see my inventory grew. I didn't have like systems to track it, but I just kind of, knew how much I had because I could very fast look at all the cards I had, all the boxes I had, and be like, all right, this is worth 10,000, this is worth 50,000, this is worth 30,000, and I kind of knew based on the box how much the stuff was worth. So in my head, I tracked it at that time. Obviously, years later, I'm more sophisticated. I have spreadsheets, I had QuickBooks, I have all these different things, but at the time I just knew everything in my head. I knew exactly what I had, and I could tell. Look, what I had. My inventory was worth 50,000 this week. Then it was worth 60. Then it was worth 100, and then so that's how I tracked it.
Got it. So at what point did you start actually keeping good records and putting systems in place?
Um, probably at least 5 6 years later,
Mhm.
when I was 20 plus years old, because I was a one man show. I didn't have employees. I didn't do anything. I did it all myself. So you know, a lot of times people will come to your desk or come to your house, be like, "Oh man, this is so disorganized." But to you, you know where everything is, so it's organized to you. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I did my baseball card business. I knew everything. I knew everything was. No one else had to know because I didn't have employees. I didn't have anyone else work for me, or I didn't have partners at the time.
Mhm.
So for me, it worked because I was organized in my way. I could find anything. I knew where everything was. So I didn't need to track it any better. And I did taxes. I would just show them, what I wanted to show them. I probably didn't pay anywhere near what I really made because almost everything was cash back then. I didn't take
Right.
checks or credit cards or anything. So, I didn't really have good books per se, but I just had to kind of tell them what I wanted them to know, the accountants and stuff.
Gotcha. So when did you start hiring? What was your first hire?
So once I started having partners, I kind of started to partner with someone toward when I was close to 20 years old. And once I did that, then I had to keep track of stuff a little bit better because now two people had to know.
Mhm.
So, we just got together and figured out what systems we wanted to have. And then, of course, once we started doing stuff together, then we started hiring people. So, my first hire was just someone that you could almost call them like an assistant, but they kind of knew how to do a little bit of everything I was doing. And I would just kind of have them do the stuff that I thought was easiest or the stuff that, was kind of taking a lot of my time that didn't bring as much value, but it was just kind of busy work. And then from there, I figured out other stuff that was important to do and hire the right people for those types of tasks.
Got it. Okay. So then for your partner, how did you find your partner?
So the way I found my first partner was we were both into baseball cards, so we were both selling. So my partner, crazy enough, was 5 to 6 years younger than me at the time. My first
Okay.
partner.
Yeah.
So I was 15, 16 years old, at the time doing these shows. They were 10, 11 years old. And when they turned like probably 12, 13, we became really good friends
Mhm.
because we would do a lot of business together. This guy was like the youngest guy. Like I was young at 15. This guy was doing what I was doing, but like at 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And he didn't have set up and have boost, but he was there wheeling and dealing just with all the other people that had boost. And then eventually, when I got to like 19, 20, he was, probably 14, 15. We became partners and we started doing stuff together. And I met him just through the shows. I saw he was a wheeler dealer. I saw he was smart, knew how to do everything. And we were doing the same stuff. And it was just better. We can make more money together than separately. And, he was able to do the stuff he was better at. I was able to do stuff I was better at. And together we made more money and was able to focus on the stuff that we enjoyed doing ourselves and giving the tasks that we didn't like or wasn't as good at to the other person.
So just being so inexperienced in, I guess, partnerships and working with someone else, how did you explore that option?
So I looked at how much money could I make doing this by myself and how much time it would take
Hmm.
and how I can make more money. And I realized that there were things that he did that I wasn't doing that I can make more money on, and there were things that I did that he didn't do that he can make more money on. And I just focused on the stuff that I was good at and that I could do more of. But to do that, I had to give up some of the stuff that I didn't enjoy as much and I wasn't as good at. So we just kind of took each other's roles of what we were better at and grew that part and let the other person do the stuff we didn't like as much. And instead of making $100,000 each, we were able to make 250 together. So we made 125,000 and we did
Right.
just the stuff we liked and it just made sense. And that's kind of the concept. And that's how we grew it.
Are you still working with him now?
We are. So what's crazy is once I find a good partner, or once we find people that I'm good to connect with,
Hmm.
I mean, there's no reason to not keep working with them forever, if they want to and there's stuff to do. So I actually still do a lot of different businesses with them to this day. So he's probably like 44 right now.
Hmm.
I'm 49.
Yeah.
And yeah, we still do stuff together. We don't do everything together. Like there's stuff he does on his own. There's stuff I do on my own. But there's a lot of stuff we do together. A lot of the biggest stuff we do together.
Got it. That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
Um, so you're doing all these I guess shows and making money. How do you get into real estate?
So the way I got into real estate was I went from baseball cards to Beanie Babies. And 1997, I was like became really big in Beanie Babies, and I did that for years. So one of the people that I was buying a lot of Beanie Babies from, I had like a supplier. He rented a house from someone, and I was really friends with this guy that was selling me these the product. And he came to me. He's like, "Man, my landlord is looking to sell my property, and I can't buy it, but like, are you interested in buying it?" I was like, I don't know. Let me look at it. I looked at it, and I talked to the landlord, and I ended up buying the property and renting it to my friend. And from there, this was back in 1999. I bought my first property in 1998, but that was one that I lived in. This is the
Hmm.
first investment property, one of the first investment properties, 1999, and I still own it to this day. Actually, it was one of the first ones I bought investment properties, and I bought it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. You could cash flow a few $100. You could diversify some money, do have some tax depreciations and stuff. And from there, I talked to the landlord. I was like, what other properties do you have? And he's like, oh, I got like 3 or 4 others that I'll sell you. I worked the deal. I bought the other three, and from there it just took off. I went from 3 homes, 5 homes, 20. And now, I have over 200 and something rentals. And a few years after I started doing the rentals, I got into some fix and flips, and I've been doing it ever since.
How did you even learn how to value these things?
Just by talking to people that did it. You make some mistakes in the beginning, but the reason why it's hard to make too many mistakes is because I got loans on everything in the beginning. So I would put down, let's say, up to 20% down and then get loans, and you'd get appraisals, and the bank would only loan you what it's worth. So because I got loans on everything, I couldn't make really that big of a mistake because they wouldn't loan you more than it's worth. But
Right.
if you're paying cash for everything in the beginning, then you really got to know what you're doing, because then you could make mistakes. So I think the thing that stops people from making too bad of mistakes is if they are getting loans from hard money lenders or banks or whoever, because they're not going to loan them that much. So that's kind of how I learned, just seeing the appraisal, seeing how they comp, and then eventually being able to do it on my own. But the fact that they wouldn't loan me more than it was worth, you know, kind of taught me how things are worth. And that's what I was doing anyway, with sports cars and Beanie Babies. I knew what
Hmm.
stuff was worth. So I just had to transfer that knowledge from one product to another product to real estate.
Makes Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you had already been doing it for almost 10 years by that point.
Yeah.
Um, so then you're doing fix and flips, you're doing some buy and holds. Uh, are you opening more businesses or when do
Yeah.
you transition into buying businesses?
Yeah. So from the sports card business, I did that for a long time. I ended up buying some competitors out just over the years,
Mhm.
but it was still on a smaller scale to what I did after. But once I got into Beanie Babies, which turned into all kinds of collectibles, I had some big websites. I had a retail location. I went around and I started buying a lot of competitors. So those were some of my biggest purchases. I bought some competitors that were, my first purchase was 600,000, and then after that, even bigger. And I just learned how to value it, and I learned how to, I didn't want to spend all my own money, so I started figuring out creative ways. So I would pay them a certain amount down. I would do some owner financing. I would do some trading, different things. So, but that's how I really got into it. I just wanted to grow faster than I was able to, like, naturally. And the only way to grow faster is to buy someone that already has a business that's making a lot, and you could exponentially grow that way, because now you could do everything you're doing plus everything they're doing overnight, double your business. And that's
Yeah.
that's how it started.
Yeah. Uh, so you start buying out these businesses. You kind of figure out creative finance on your own by just not wanting to use your own money.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can grow faster. That's the only way to grow,
Okay.
fast. It's not if you use your own money for everything, you're gonna run out. It doesn't matter how rich you are. You have billions of dollars, and eventually you run out of money. So you got to figure out ways to leverage other people's money.
And then so are you just bringing in more partners to help you manage everything that you're doing?
So there's two ways to do it. That's one way. You could bring partners in, or you could get debt, right? So when you bring partners in, is equity. So you're splitting the
Hmm.
profits, or you get debt, which is how I really did most of it in the beginning, which was I figured out ways to get loans or owner financing, and they weren't partners with me, but I owed them money every month for the amount of money that I borrowed, and then eventually I started doing a little bit of both. Then getting more partners. I'm big into partners. I have partners in 95% of my businesses, and that always worked for me. I've learned a lot. I've had some bad partners in the beginning, figured out ways to avoid some of that. And but if you get new partners, you're going to run into some bad ones every so often. You just gotta know how to get rid of them as fast as possible and put safeguards in place. And then when you find good ones, try to do as much stuff as you can with them.
So when you're finding new partners, what are some of the big things that you look for?
I look to see if we have a good connection with each other. I want to see how successful they are. I want to see what they're knowledgeable in. I want to see their work ethic. I want to see if they're trustworthy, and just talk to them enough to see if we have a good vibe or not. If I could tell by talking to someone long enough if they're going to be a good person or sneaky or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and then most of my partners are partners that I've had for a long time that I just do new stuff with, but I do pick up new ones as well. So I figure out how did I meet this person, who are their friends, what type of friends do they have, how do we meet, all these different things, and take that all into play and see how they can bring value to you and how you bring value to them, and it makes sense for everyone.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you, when you're going through all this, what are like the top five skills that were most important to get you to where you're at today?
I would say one of the most important is being able to make fast decisions. Being able to make fast decisions correctly is huge. Being able to read people, to know if someone's bullshitting you, if they're a good person, bad person, if they're a con artist. Being able to tell how people are. I would say being very friendly is
Hmm.
very important. So you got to get everyone to like you.
Hmm.
So I'm very easygoing, and I can get anyone to like me. Like if I want someone to like me, they're gonna like me. I know how to build rapport. So building rapport with people, getting trust. That's really important. Figuring out ways to get good deals for you and them, and just have these win-win transactions so that everybody wins, and being able to be very good at negotiating. Negotiating is really important. You've got to be able to negotiate and show everybody why it's good for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the
Creativity.
key.
I'm the thing that I'm known the most for is being
Mhm.
creative. So I would say for me, that's one of my superpowers is how creative I am. So I could, if the more creative you are, the more stuff you can do
Yeah, I
in
remember
general in life.
from your electrician story.
Yeah,
That I think about that a lot.
yeah, and I have tons of stories like that. It's just you got to think outside the box and figure out ways to do everything.
Yeah. Um, so now you have transitioned, well, you haven't really transitioned. You're just doing the same thing, but on a bigger scale. One of the
Yeah.
things that you've added to your streams of income is lending. Um, what got you into lending?
So I've always did lending for a long time, but just on a really small scale. Like I would have like two or three people I'd always lend to,
Hmm.
and I never thought much of it. I was just like, all right, I'm helping them doing that. So, um, and then like years later, I had some of the people I lent to that referred other people to me, and then I started lending to some of them, friends of friends. And probably about 6 years ago or so, I grew it to where I was actually lending to 8 to 10 people,
Hmm.
and it was really profitable. And I learned how to be safe and protect yourself and stuff, so you don't lose and underwrite stuff right. And then once I would say in 2020, this was like 4 years ago, I started loaning even to more people, and really turned it into one of my major focuses about 3 years ago. And I always use my own money to do it. And about 4 years ago, I started telling people that I was doing it, and I had some friends that are also wealthy. They're like, "Oh man, you're making good returns. Can I give you some of my money to loan out as well?" So once I was able to start getting more money from other people, I was able to grow it faster because I always had like between $5 to $8 million of my own money in on loans, but I had people that were asking me for more loans than even that. So once I was able to figure out ways to get money from people, pay them good returns, and then I was able to grow it. So over the last 3 years, it's grown like crazy. So I always have over $20 million out to loans, basically all for fix and flips, pretty much in the Atlanta market, or definitely in Georgia, because I only loan those type of loans in Georgia. But I always have plenty of people that every single day I'm looking at deals people want me to fund and underwriting them and figuring out how much I'll lend and stuff like that. So that became one of the top things. The last year, that was probably my biggest money maker out of all three things. It was I made more money in the loans than I did in my businesses and in real estate.
Just by leveraging the network that you've built locally?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows to come to me if they need loans, and then a lot of people that have extra money that they want to make good returns on, they
Mhm.
come to me, and I put their money into loans. Super safe. I back everything, I underwrite everything, and yeah, for the last few years, I have a lot of people that have money in, and they get great returns, and I pay everybody interest every month. I collect interest every month, and that's just, and then I have a couple people that work with me now that are just in charge of that business, the lending business.
Have you ever thought about expanding to another state if you found the right partner?
Potentially, but I like Atlanta for a bunch of reasons, or I like Georgia for a lot of reasons. But I would consider it, but it would have to be something that my partner is mostly in charge of, and I would just help them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do these private money, masterminds, at least two a year, sometimes three a
Mhm.
year. I think last year we did three. And after these events, I do partner with people in other states. So I have some people that have come that have, they've set up their own business in their states, and we
Mhm.
work together a little bit and help each other on those. So anyone that comes to those, I always work with them and help them figure out ways to loan more money out, to raise money, and stuff like that. So I definitely would do other states with somebody else. I wouldn't do it on my own.
Yeah, of course, partners.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up your mastermind, the PML mastermind, because I went to the first one that you did in Atlanta, like virtually.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot because I kind of fell into lending because my mom wanted to retire, so I moved all of her money into a self-directed and essentially turned her into the bank because I didn't want her to be a landlord.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of lessons. Like, luckily, everything's worked out. Some of them were most of them were second position loans, and they've all worked out pretty well for the most part. Um, but after going through I guess your mastermind and understanding the reason why you're getting paid so much interest is because of the level of risk. So I had started doing the same thing for friends and family at a much smaller scale, but it's really helped. I try to mirror my lending business kind of similar to yours because
You should, because it works. But it's not just the risk why you get that interest. The main reason why you get that interest is because the people you're loaning it to are making a lot more money than they're paying you, and they can't make that money without you lending them that money. So they need
Mhm.
that money. But there's
Yeah.
a little bit of risk. But if you do it the way I show you, it's very, very minimal. It's almost no risk. The only risk that really there is, if you do everything I teach, is
Mhm.
if the market just tanked. If the market just went down like crazy, that would
Yeah.
probably be the only like really real risk. All the other risks, there's no risk if you do it the way I show you. And I also show you what the risk levels are, so you can do it with no risk, you could do it with minimal risk, you can do it with a lot of risk, based on your comfort level. And of course, the more risk there are, the more you're going to have to charge because you're going to lose on some of the riskier ones.
Yeah, for sure. And I see a lot of people losing on the riskier ones. They're like,
Yeah,
what happened?
as long as they know they're risky and they're okay with making a lot or losing a lot, then it's okay. It just sucks if you don't know that it's risky and you do it. That's where I
Yeah.
don't like. But you came to the first one I ever. I mean, we were at the first one I ever did in Atlanta. That was a 1 day one. That was the only one I did that was 1 day.
Hmm.
So I had such good feedback from that one that everyone was wanted more. So ever since then, they've all been 2 days,
Hmm.
and we go through like double the amount of stuff. And there's a lot of new stuff I added. So if you're doing this, if you're doing a lot of lending, you
Hmm.
should definitely check it out now because it's like double the content, and we go through stuff in more detail. And yeah, it would even help you a lot more. If you already came to the other one, so whatever, I'll hook you up on this next. Where do you live? What state do you live
I live in Orlando.
in? Okay, in Orlando.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, we did one in. Oh, that was Miami. We did one in Miami.
Yeah.
Or
Do you want in Orlando or Tampa?
no, I did my other mastermind in Tampa. I did a business buying one in
Hmm.
Tampa maybe like a year and a half ago or something. But yeah, we travel some, but the next one's gonna be in Atlanta again. Atlanta's the easiest for me because I'm here.
Hmm.
Plus, I have the biggest following in Atlanta, so like I have more people that want to come here. But it's fun going to other states and doing them in other places too.
Well, if you ever want to do something in Central Florida, I'm happy to help facilitate that.
All right, yeah, no, for sure. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah. So for the lending, yours is mostly asset based, right?
Hmm.
Do you do any kind of borrower profile?
Not really. When it comes to first position loans, I don't care about the person because keep in mind I'm doing loans in Georgia, and in
Hmm.
Georgia, if someone doesn't pay you, you can get the house back in 30 days, like literally 30 days. Like it's the fastest in the country. There's a
Hmm.
few other states that are similar. So I'm loaning you an amount that's a decent amount less than what it's worth or what I think I could sell it for.
Hmm.
And if you don't pay me, I'm just going to take the house. And people just don't let me take the house because they have too much equity. So I always get paid. I don't care if you're someone that's not going to pay me. I'll take the house. I make more money.
Yeah.
So now if I'm doing second position loans, which I do very little, I do some, but very very little. Those I do care a lot more about the profile of the person because those you could get screwed a lot easier on second position loans for a lot of different reasons. So
Hmm.
on those, I try to really know the person or be able to see who they've dealt with, what type of person they are, stuff like that. Or I just don't do them. But on first
Yeah.
position loans in a state that you could foreclose pretty fast, it's not that important to check the person out in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the way that you have your setup because you have, I mean, you're doing a lot of deals, but when you think about people that are trying to do scale and grow, you think they're trying to go like nationwide, but you just are comfortable in Georgia. You have all the teams and everything in place.
Yeah.
Is that something that, so for someone like me who is just getting started in lending, uh, would you suggest that I set up everything in one market, one state,
Yeah, I
and
mean, it's
do?
always easier to do it in one market, one state. However, it comes down to your deal flow. If you have enough people that that will need to borrow money from you in that
Mm,
particular state,
yeah.
then why go anywhere else? Because you're going to get really specialized in that state. You're going to know that state really well. You're going to know the laws. You're going to know how to comp and underwrite way faster, and basically probably not make any mistakes or very minimal ones. If you start going to other states and all kinds of markets, you're not going to understand the laws on everything. You're not
Mm,
going to understand the foreclosure laws. You're also not going to be able to underwrite and comp as good. Like I could comp anywhere in the country, but I'm going to be way worse anywhere else than in the Atlanta market. In the Atlanta market, I can comp in 2 seconds and be dead on accurate.
mm,
And if I comp in Orlando, I'll still be good. I'll be better than 99% people but I'm not going to be better than the people that focus on Orlando and that's all they do. They're going to be better than me. They know the area. So if you have enough people that want to lend and borrow in your city or state, I would just stick to that. But if you're like, look, I just don't have enough people, then I would pick another market or a few other markets and do it, but just make sure you get really good at those markets. What I
yeah.
wouldn't do is be like, okay, I'm going to lend anywhere, and no matter what state, no matter what, just be okay, fine. You've got to have a lend box. You've got to have a lend
Mm,
box, and at least put, you know, what dollar amounts you'll lend, will you lend in what positions you'll lend, what cities, what states, what interest rate, all that stuff. You got to have a box and just don't go outside of that because that's how people make the biggest mistakes. They just don't have a box and they'll just do anything
right.
and they just don't know enough and they make mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So then if you did not have the network that you had in Atlanta and you were just going to and you want to start a lending business, how would you begin marketing?
Well, I'd begin marketing by going to all the local meetups and joining all the Facebook groups and whatever other groups I could join. And then I would post all my wins on my own social media, Facebook,
Mm,
Instagram, whatever. It'd be like, look, I just did this deal. This person made this much. I made this much. Man, it was a great deal for everyone. Just keep posting like stuff, and then all your friends will see what you're doing. And then you don't have to go out and ask people to loan you money. People just come to you, be like, oh, I saw you did really good. How can I get involved? Or tell me more about it. And then that's what you want. You want people coming to you because then it's an easy deal instead of coming. So the more you post about something, and the more you take action and go to different meetups, connect with all the wholesalers, connect with all the title companies, connect with, in that area,
mhm,
eventually you'll start doing business. And then what happens is it grows exponentially because, half the people that I loan to now, if maybe even more than half, I didn't know them and I didn't meet them in local Facebook groups. I didn't meet them in local meetups. How did I meet them? I met him from people I loaned to, and they referred other people to me. So it grows from referrals. So a lot of it ends up being referrals, but you've got to start. It doesn't grow like overnight, like huge, but slowly it will grow, and hopefully you find a couple good people that need multiple loans, and then hopefully the amount of money that they need you can come up with, and then hopefully the amount of loans that you end up able to do will match up to the amount of money that you could raise or have yourself and kind of grow both at the same time.
Okay, I like to pivot to business buying because I met one of your partners. He does the escape rooms all over the
Oh,
country.
Dimitri?
Yeah, Dimitri, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm actually in the process of selling a bunch of my single family homes just to be more liquid and to turn it into cash flow versus just holding on to assets for right
Uh-huh.
now for where I'm at in my business. So what are some things to look at when you are going into when you're buying businesses?
Well, when you're buying businesses, the most important thing to look at is how much money they make. So you got to get the financials and see how much
Hmm.
money they make. But as important as that is making sure that you're buying it from someone that's motivated. Because if you're not buying it from someone that's motivated, you're just not going to get a good deal. So the motivations that I look for in when I'm buying businesses, number one, people that are old enough to want to retire. That's like a big motivation.
Hmm.
And then I'm looking for people that are sick, people that are getting divorced, people that are burnt out, people that are moving out of town, different things like that. But I would say the main thing to focus on are retirement age, and if you start with that, that's going to be the number one.
Yeah. But like not all these businesses have good records. So does that prevent you from buying it
Well,
or
if something doesn't, if someone doesn't have good records, then it's not worth anything. I mean, it's
mm,
only worth what you can prove that it makes. So if someone's like, "Oh, I do all cash," or "I don't keep good records,"
mm,
I can only base what it's worth based on their tax returns and what they actually pay. Because how do you know if they're telling the truth or not? The only way to know if they're telling the truth is if they have good records and there's a paper trail for the last few years of what they've done, or you just happen to know that person very well and you trust them, or maybe you hang out at their business or have someone hang out at their business for work there for 3 6+ months, and it's consistent from what they told you based on the person you have there working, and you see that it is. Or you could buy their business and have some sort of deal where, like, look, you say it's making this and it's worth this. I don't know because you don't have good records. I'll pay you this based on what you did show records of, and if it does really do what you're saying, I'll double it or triple it, but based
mm,
on how it actually does, because there's no way for me to know. You would never buy something based on numbers someone tells you if there's
right.
no good records. Anyone that's selling a real business, they're going to have good records, or they can't think to themselves that they're actually going to get much money for it because it just doesn't make sense. They wouldn't buy it. No one else would buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then okay, so that's a good point. Now for like, an opportunity like what Dimitri's presenting. He presents performas. I have issues with performas because it's all kind of theoretical. So
100%. I
then
agree.
so then what do you for something like that, how do you
So
verify?
what he's doing are more unique type things. So what I would do is I would look at all the people he's partnered with in that same industry
Hmm.
and check their numbers out. So I don't know which business particularly you're talking about. He does multiple things. He does, like, he does spin art, he does escape rooms, he does extra, he does different things. But let's just assume, I think one of the things that he's pushing the most now is spin art and escape rooms.
Hmm.
So what I would do is, besides looking at the performa, look at the other 6 7 locations of spin art that he has. He has one in Phoenix, he has one in North Carolina, he has one in Texas, he has in Georgia. So he has, Chicago, he has like different places. So I would say, let me see your numbers on those businesses since they've opened, and see which ones are the worst, which ones are the best, figure out why, and use those numbers instead of performas, or use a performa with that together. But
Yeah.
I always want to see, real numbers like you do.
Hmm.
Not everybody does. Like performas for some stuff, some people are good with. It's more risky. So anytime you do something that's more risky, the reward's got to be, a match up. But
Yeah.
he has enough of the business he's pushing now that's been open for long enough to where you can see real locations what they've done.
Yeah, so I've asked for like past three. I don't know if they've been in business for 3 years, but I've
A
looked
lot, a
at.
lot of them only been in business for a year, but some of them have been in business 2 or 3 years. It's for spin
Okay,
art. For
yeah,
escape rooms, he's had them that have been in business for 9, 10 years. So you could look at crazy amounts of data for escape rooms, but for spin art, you probably could only look at maybe a year to 2 years for most locations.
yeah. So I look at the escape rooms because I mean the theming is really cool. And so yeah, what the things that I asked for were the performa, obviously, and then 3 years of financials for multiple locations.
Yeah,
Is there anything else I should be looking for?
I mean you should get the financials and then the tax returns.
Returns, tax returns. Okay.
But you start with the financials, and then you're using the tax returns just to match it up to make sure
Uh,
that because anyone can get financials and change them, you know.
yeah.
So you can't really change a tax return. The only
Right.
time you're going to have fake tax returns is if someone's purposely overpaying in taxes because they know they're trying to sell something and they
hmm
want, to make it look better, but they're going to be paying more in taxes on, for multiple years. So like it's very rare people will do that.
Yeah.
But especially on these smaller type businesses, they're typically not going to pay way overpay on purpose. Maybe for 1 year they will. Like it's the last. So I'll see this. I'll be like, let me see the last 3 years or whatever of tax returns. So the third year and 2 years ago they were whatever, and then all of a sudden last year it was like 10 times more, 5 times more. Like what happened last year?
Yeah.
They knew that they were selling it, and they just made up. They just look, they added all this stuff in just to, when they do sell it, it looks better. But that would be a red flag for me if all 3 years aren't like consistent or made sense. So
hmm
if the last particular year happened to be way more, that would be a big red flag. Sometimes it makes sense, but most of the time, something's very strange.
Cool. Super helpful. Amazing. So, do you have any other events coming up?
Yeah. So my next PML mastermind is March 1st and 2nd. It's going to be in Atlanta. It's the second one we're doing in Atlanta. You were at the first one, so this
Mm-hmm.
will be the second one. But it's a full 2 day event at a nice hotel, and yeah, we'll be going through a lot of new content, and of course everything that we had in yours, but it'll just be like double the amount of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. So, how can people reach out to you and how can people work with you?
Yeah, you could follow me first off on social media. So it's Abraham Gray, Gray. Facebook, Instagram, it's Abraham Gray Official. YouTube, Abraham Gray, Gray. And then, you can email me. Email me anything, and I respond to every email really fast. My email is Abraham, Abraham, and then 6 letters, MMA like mixed martial arts, and then ATL like Atlanta.com. So Abraham at MMAATL.com. You email me, I respond to everybody. And we could, whether it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's business, real estate, lending, or anything else, I'll definitely get back to everyone pretty fast. That's my main thing. I'm on my emails all day, every day.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.